Film Review, Movies, Music, Culture, Politics, Society podcast, interviews, movie reviews, and more. Live Sundays at 5:30 p.m. on the Film Review Live channel. Subscribe.
Hi, this is Bernadette Stannis, Thelma from Good Times, and you're watching the Film Review.
And here we are, people. It's another great episode of the Film Review.
Yep.
We are your hosts. I'm Crazy Dee,
Tracey.
and we review movies, music, culture, politics, and society.
Yes.
And we are on for another great episode. Do we have a jam-packed show for you today?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
It is entitled The Psychological Horror of Having Tits and Ass. That's right. The psychological horror of having tits and ass, right? You know, well, we're going to get into that. First of all, let's talk about what's happening in the blurbs this week before we get started. So, as usual, like I always ask you, how was your week?
It's pretty good. I mean, well, as good as it could be under the circumstances.
Under the circumstances, that's right.
Yeah, but I mean, oh my gosh, did you see in the news today what the Hornets?
That's right. The Hornets are coming from
Asia.
You know, they're coming from Asia.
Killer Hornets.
Killer Hornets.
Yes.
That's right. I mean, it's just a real crazy thing going on. Like, what's going on with all these things coming from China?
So the Hornets have been released.
The Hornets have been released, and it's not the green hornet
No.
or the brown hornet. It is killer hornets. That's right, people. So we are in for a situation. Then they say there's a bug that is here, a flying bug that is here in Las Vegas that resembles a mosquito, right?
Okay.
But it resembles a mosquito. Now, they didn't really say if it bites or whatnot, but it's definitely going to be pestilent.
Did they say where it came from? Or?
They didn't say where it came from. They just said it's a bug here. They probably don't know exactly where it came from.
Okay.
So that's probably what the problem is, right?
Okay.
So as the news goes on, as this shutdown continues, Las Vegas has been extended out.
Right.
Our Governor Sisolak, does not believe that Las Vegas is ready to have tourists to be reopened. So he is keeping it closed because that is how they have kept things down, right?
Okay.
So listen, people, you're watching us on a certain social media site. It doesn't need advertisements, so we don't mention them. You can also call us at 213-943-3358. That's 213-943-3358 on Blog Talk, right? And we're also simulcasting at the same time on those two platforms. We're also on the Film Review Live channel. The Film Review Live channel at YouTube. On YouTube, just go there and you will see us. We are episode 111. Episode 111. And again, the title, the horror, the psychological horror of being tits and ass. That's right, people.
So this is hashtag Me Too?
Hashtag Me Too. I don't know. I'm not really getting into the Me Too aspect of it because, speaking of Me Too, look at how Me Too is fumbling the football when it comes to Joe Biden. They're fumbling the football. Yeah. They don't want to mention anything about Joe Biden. They want to let it pass on. So it just goes to prove the hypocrisy of it all. That if it's your guy, then, you can somewhat pass by your guy doing something, so torrid and lusty as.
Right. And the woman, I can't think of her name right now, but she stated that she's disappointed because she's a lifelong Democrat,
Mm-hmm.
and no one is coming to her defense the
No
way
one's
they
coming to her
did for
defense.
Ford when it came to with Justice Kavanaugh, right?
Right, right.
So yeah, I'm surprised she hasn't had like a major interview yet, like on any of the channels, like.
You know, Chris Hayes broke the story. I believe he broke it on Wednesday finally, and then they started putting tweets out talking about he was a second-rate reporter. Now, when he was when he was just towing the line and not mentioning it, and not mentioning this going on with Biden, it was okay. But now that he's speaking on it, all of a sudden it's a problem.
So I guess this woman won't be sitting down with Rachel Maddow, I guess.
Well, I think that usually when Chris Hayes does that, usually Rachel Maddow usually follows suit. They usually 1-2.
Okay.
Usually.
Okay.
Now, we don't know what's going to be going on. Okay. You know, not necessarily. We don't know what's going to be going on, but usually it's a 1-2 punch, right? Ask me, though, do I really care?
Do you really care?
Not really. It's just part of the news, and we should talk about it because the hypocrisy is so deep.
You know what else is going on? Okay, so we talked about Kelly Rowland's new single last week.
Yes, we did.
So this week we have with 2 remixes.
2 remixes out, sure.
We have with Megan Thee Stallion featuring Beyonce.
Beyonce is spitting lyrics, and people are waiting for her rap album, right?
Yeah. And we also have the Doja Cat, Nicki Minaj remix.
Oh wow, you knew that was getting ready to happen, right?
Yeah. So
Doja Cat has a real great concept behind what she's doing. Yeah. So I have to give her props on that.
Yeah, so those 2 remixes are out. And, yeah.
That's about it. Okay, people. So now it's time as I do a last minute pushing out of the show that is on right now. Let me just push this out a little bit. We again are broadcasting live on the Film Review Live channel on YouTube. That's the Film Review Live channel on YouTube. And make sure that when you share it with people, make sure you put the hashtag TFR Podcast Live. Hashtag TFR Podcast Live. And you know, if you put that into Google, it takes you to everything. Everything is tied together by hashtag TFR Podcast Live. Yes, it is. So we're gonna get started here. We warmed you up with what's happening.
Oh yeah, so Rihanna's dropping a documentary.
Oh yeah, what's her documentary about?
About her.
You know, nothing in particular. How she started out in
just what's been going on in her life. So.
What's been going on in her life? You know, that sounds like that'd be pretty interesting. Huh? Yeah. See what's going on in Rihanna's life. All right, so as people, did you know that we picked up a few more countries around the globe? If you haven't been checking out our advertisement, yes, we have picked up a few more countries. And now, people, we are ready to kick off and start the show. Had to make sure I got the promotions underway, and we are ready. Again, we are on the Film Review Live channel on YouTube, on a certain social media site, on Crazy ID, and of course 213-943-3358, 213-943-3358 on Blog Talk, and you can listen to us there. So we have perfect streaming. So people, look. Last week, we talked about the film Goodbye Uncle Tom, right? We talked about Goodbye Uncle Tom, and we broke down 8 scenes that had to do with the structure that we see today. Goodbye Uncle Tom is a film that is brutally honest. It is a fictional account of 2 documentary filmmakers going back to antebellum slavery in Louisiana, and so that's the fiction of it. But everything else that they put in the film is factual, It's based on facts, right?
Right.
So last week we hit 8 scenes, right?
Yeah.
And this week, you know, I thought it would be too much last week to have the last scene because I wanted people to go see the film, and I noticed that I was on the guest last week's certain social media page, and the people, she had posted this interview that we did because she talked about healthy food and freezing foods, right? That are fresh, fresh vegetables and fruit, and how to sustain them past their regular week or 2 shelf life into 6 to 9 months, right? So that's episode 110. So so I went on her site and she posted the interview as well as the film.
Oh, okay.
Right? And so I noticed that people in the film, they were like, oh, I think I'm going to regret this already. Or they said something of the order of, I stopped watching because it got too much for me after watching it. And someone else said after watching it in doses. Listen, you have to start to take the emotion out of watching films about the condition that brought us here in the United States of America. You have to begin to, how can I put it, become numb, not to the facts, but become numb enough to watch the facts to be able to watch a film and to be able to say this is factual and this is a symptom that is still in the system that came from this, that is still in this society today in American Black society today. And once you realize that, then you can eliminate it out. So the last portion that we did not talk about, because I thought that it would be just a little much, but we start out to cover it this week because, again, the topic has to do with the horror of the psychological horror of tits and ass. That's right, right? And so I say that blatantly because we have a point and we're going to break it down. But the first thing that we're going to open up with is the breeding farms, right? A lot of people talk about, oh, we're African. Other people say, why do you call yourself Black? Some people say we're African American. Other people say foundational Black Americans. Other people say ADOS, American Descendants of Slaves. Here we say American Blacks, right? We are American Blacks, American Black society, right? And why do I say that, or why do we say that? We say that because there was such a thing as breeding farms. At one point, globally, they stopped the mid-Atlantic slave trade. They stopped it, right? So people in different countries, especially America, had to figure out a way to keep slavery going because they weren't ready to end slavery because they were growing cotton, soybean, you name it, tobacco, you name it. They were growing these crops and they needed the bodies to pick this and gather this and bring it to market because this was a $1 million industry that was going across the globe. Cotton was going across the globe. Tobacco was going across the globe. So they had to figure a way to keep this going. And they came with breeding farms. And this film, Goodbye Uncle Tom, covers this. So we're going to talk about this. And we're going to go into the psychology and how it affects Black women, afflicts Black women in this society, and how we kind of touched on it, how it kind of hits into the election. They always talk about how Donald Trump said he could grab them by the woo-woo, but he really didn't say he could grab him by the woo-woo. He said they let him, because of who he is, grab him by the difference. But we're going to get into all that, right? So look. Viewer discretion is advised as we go through this because we are going through quite a number of films today. We're going through quite a number of films, so you should get your pad and pencil and get ready because we're going through quite a number of films. That's one. Two, we're also going to be reviewing Beats movie on Netflix, right? So we have a fantastic show for you this evening. So again, viewer discretion is advised as we kick this off. But again, this one right here is called Breeding Farms, and we're going to go through it right now. Viewer discretion is advised.
All right, that's all now. These fine brood mares are for the House and Mandinga stallions I purchased 3 years ago. 87% pregnant at any given time, with an average interval between delivery and conception of less than 60 days. Hey, where are you? Ah, there you are. Now, this is what I call a really fine brood wench. Drops twins every year, and they're 2 and A again this time. She's worth a fortune. Come on! Come over here. Look at this. What a chance you've got. Come and see how a little bastard comes into the world. Beauty, eh? Must be about 7 pounds. This one's dedicated to you. I'll call him Macaroni.
So you see, people, so this is showing you the breeding farms, right? And so this is as blatant as you can see. Again, this was shot in Haiti, right? 1969, 1970 to come out in 1971, right? And this is the breeding farm, right? And like again, I always ask that question: what type of economic instability was there for Haitians to be willing to do this film? I mean, it is blatant. Viewer discretion is advised, and we're going to push through this, and we're going to continue on now. So stay tuned. We're going to keep going here.
Good girl, Cleopatra. Who's the sire?
Don't really know, Master. You had me covered by Pluto, only it didn't take. Then you had me pleasured by Nestor.
Oh, that's all right.
To be sure.
He's a beauty anyway. See how your master keeps his word? It's a prize. $1 a pup. I have 136 in stock.
$1 a pup. He said he kept his word. He paid $1 a pup. Is that not something? Let's keep going.
But this should give you an idea of the product. It takes talent to create a strain like this. The breeder must work with colors like an artist. A bit of white here, a bit of black there. Now a touch of red, there a whisper of white. Until out comes something which is neither black, nor white, nor red, nor yellow, but an indisputable masterpiece.
So did you hear what he said? He said, indisputable masterpiece. For those listening on Blog Talk, you can go right over to the Film Review Live channel, and you can see the actual footage that we're playing. And then on the replay, of course, all that's going to be in there. But you can go right over here to the Film Review Live channel on YouTube, or you can go to a certain social media site, Crazon Dion, and you can watch it there. Let's continue. Right, so something that's not black or white. This is the breeding farm.
Ready, Wilson? Shall we go?
Been waiting for you.
And the winch?
Ready.
That's good. Bring her along.
All right, let's go. Down, boy.
Good boy, Casanova. These studs go wild with the smell of a wench. He's got more seed in him than a dozen bulls. They offered me $4,500 for him in Benson, but I wouldn't take it. Good old James, my champion. 200 pounds of muscle and not an ounce of fat. If I wanted, he could cover 4 or 5 wenches a day.
Now, the main thing that they talk about is how they wanted to make sure that that the black African male was strong in body, but weak in mind. And this is a representation of this. So once you learn about breeding farms and the stalls, and I said to myself, as a young person, when I learned that, I said, I'm not interested in being someone that goes from stall to stall to stall. Do you understand that? I'm not interested in being a person that goes from stall to stall to stall. And then that's where, you know, it all comes into where the rubber hits the road, really, right? So let me go back here. All right. So let's continue.
But I'm not wasting him. Remember, Wilson, if he does any damage, that's your problem.
I want you to be a nice little mare. Little mare, little mare, little mare.
Now, let's pause this real quick. Now, look. That's during that time of antebellum slavery, and those were the breeding farms, right? So the breeding farms are happening, and they are creating a total different human altogether, right? So they're breeding different tribes together. And as you can see, as you watch the film, you see that he talks about the specimen that's created from off of this. And it's not a person that can be considered black or white, red, right? It's a totally different situation. So when people talk about, oh, we're from Africa, well, not necessarily. Because at a certain point, this is the African slave trade, the Mid-Atlantic slave trade is cut off. And thus breeding farms come. So they're breeding and creating a new human. I used to call it Afric style when I was in college. I used to have the African medallions, and I had like the black letters that would go around it in gold, the black sticky letters in gold that would say Afric style being. That's what I would say, you know, as I was learning this stuff, right? But we have to go back a ways. We have to go back to where this actually comes from, right? This is where the rubber is going to hit the road, right? So we have to look at where this actually comes from, and we're looking at beauty standards, right? We're looking at beauty standards right now. Now, right up here on the screen, I have the goddess Nut. She is an Egyptian goddess, right? Now, we're talking about 3218 to 3035 BC, right? This is the first dynasty of Egypt, right? And they had gods. Now, Nut is a female goddess, right? And she protects a god that is beneath her, who is a male god. She is said to, usually she's depicted with stars in her body, right? Because she protects a certain god that's earth god from the night. It's said that each evening she would swallow up the sun god Ra, and every morning she would give birth to Ra every morning. That's the mythology of the sun goddess Nut, right? It's spelled Nut, but in the pronunciation from Egypt, it's called Nut, right? So as we go through, so originally the black woman's body is revered, and it's no doubt, no matter even if they're trying to lighten up the images on the walls of Egypt, Egyptians knew that they were black, right? They have references that say that they are black, they are proud to be a black people. And if you want to see, if you follow our story or the story of the Egyptians or history of the Egyptians or her story of the Egyptians, you will find that as the dynasties went on, they were then conquered, and the people who were once Egyptians, you will find them in the Sudan. You want to see the Egyptians, they migrated down to the Sudan, right? Those are the Egyptians, and those are a beautiful dark people. So let's continue with this, right? So now look, the reason why I called this the horror is people probably thought it was going to be salacious, but you know, we're educated around here. The psychological horror of tits and ass, to be considered tits and ass. Now, the black woman's body was revered here as one who brought life, right? So let's continue, because as the dynasties go on and as they're conquered, things start to happen, right? Now remember these years now, 3210 to 3035 BC, right? We're not seeing any Greeks or Romans yet, right? So let's go through here. So that's okay. Now look, on the walls of Egypt, they don't tell you now. This particular hieroglyphic has to do with dancing, right? Now, how could they explain this? How could they explain this to you? Because so many things have been stolen, right? So many things have been stolen. So as we get closer, we show you the larger as it gets closer. So first it's a 2 level of the hieroglyphics. Now I'm showing you the 2nd level where there is a dance going on, right? And then as you go on, we're going to bring you up to the larger. Okay, so this is the larger image of the dancers, right? There is nothing new under the sun. This is belly dancing, people, from Egyptians. Belly dancing on the walls. There's certain things that they can't explain to you, because if they're the first, if they say that, you know, black people come after or whatever, this wouldn't be here. But this is on the walls, right? And so as you see, they are naked, right? But the body meant something different then. It was revered, right? But everything is turned topsy-turvy. So let's continue. So as we go on, so this right here is 2613 to 2434 BC. As you see the king, then you see the goddess, right? And then you see the helper here, right? But what do you notice about the goddess? I have it covered up though, but everything is naked in these images, and they meant something different. But we're going to get to when the nudity changed over, when it changed from being revered to being considered T and A. So let's continue. So as we go through here and we come up on the next image. Now, as Egypt began to be conquered and it began to be taken over, you find images like this, like sculptures like this in temples, right? Now, how many times have we seen images like this in modern time, in photographs, in paintings? Now, we're going to get there. But in photographs in particular, you see this, right? You see this right here. It's blatant, it's right there out front. So there's nothing new under the sun as it starts to go through. Okay, so people, let's continue on. Now, as we come to the next image, now, Venus. Around 700 BC, we start to see the emergence of the Greeks and the Romans, you see? We start to see the emergence of these groups of people. And so remember now, Nut was a goddess that protected basically the earth, gave birth every morning to the sun god Ra, and then would swallow up Ra in the evening going into night, and then protected the god or gods that were walking amongst the people in Egypt, right? Right? But then we come to 700 BC, and we come to Venus. She is a Greek representation of a female goddess. And what is she the goddess of? She's the goddess of love, sex, etc., etc., etc. So the Greeks take what was considered, it was revered, right? Nut was revered. It was about life. They take it and flip it and turn it into Venus, and she is about sex. Now, in a way, you know, sex does bring about life. Sex, love, lust, some of that can bring about life, but this is the change. This is the transformation that goes into something that is totally different than what you would expect people to, you know, what you would expect, right? So here we are. This is the change, 700 BC. So let's go forward now. So by the time Cleopatra comes into existence, and we're going to freeze this. This is a sculpture of Cleopatra. As you see, they somehow chiseled her nose off still because, you know, she's Greek and Egyptian, Greek and black, right? But as you see, she's chiseled, you know, she's just totally nude here. And we've seen the story of Elizabeth Taylor, and we've read it, Elizabeth Taylor version. That's still not what she looked like, but here we come to, she was reigned in between the times, because this is this particular dynasty, right? And that particular dynasty is called, let me make sure that I have it right, let me make sure I have it on my paper here. It is called, oh man, I had it on my paper, but now I don't have it here, but I want to make sure I had the dynasty right. But she ruled in between 323 and 30 BC, right? So she rules in between that time, right? It's called the Ptolemaic dynasty.
Okay.
The Ptolemaic dynasty, right? Okay. And she rules during that time, but as you can see, the beginning of what the images meant in Egypt, from the first dynasty to the Ptolemaic dynasty, which is coming to an end because the Greeks take it over, Romans take it over, then Egypt falls, and then, as you know, by that time the what are in Sudan, the Sudanese, they were once Egyptians, now they're in the Sudan, right? So let's continue on. So now let's take this forward now. So from that period, you know, from that period to today, from the first dynasty to today, that's 5120. That's 5,120 years from Nut, the first dynasties in Egypt, to today. That's 5,120 years, right? 5,120 years from that period. Sometimes people don't really calculate and look at dates and years and really look at this. This is going on, right? And as it moves on, it moves through. So by the time we get to 78 and 80, right, and we're being subject to the art museum. All we're seeing in the art museum is this. Things like this, right? We're subject to images. Viewer discretion is advised. It's just like burning your eyes to look at this. This is the beauty standard that we have been subject to, right? Which is a beauty standard of Venus, which again doesn't have to do with creation. It has to do with love, lust, sex, whoop-de-whoop, right? So let that sink in for a minute. So then when you come to the time of the breeding farms and how the European thinks, he and she thinks in a goddess Venus mind state, and not a Nut, because that's all destroyed and it's torn down and the noses are blown off and it's disfigured. And even for the people who get the Nefertiti earrings and get the Nefertiti busts and they say that this is Nefertiti, and even though it's painted brown, you know how you used to have a white Santa Claus and then you just paint them brown to represent, or you would have a fireman bust or whatever, and you would paint one black to represent black. Mm-hmm. Those Nefertiti busts, the archaeologists, to honor his wife, you can search this out, to honor his wife, he had a bust made and had it buried, and then he had pictures taken as he pulled the bust out as if this was Queen Nefertiti. So if you really want to know what Queen Nefertiti looked like, you can find her on the walls of Egypt, and there are pictures. But unfortunately, those earrings that you've been buying and all that is from, unfortunately, that is not the real Nefertiti. That is a image of a white woman at the, but anyway, but that's not what we're here for, but that's kind of what we're here for. So now, people, as we move forward, we have quite a few movies that prove this point. We talked about how there were 8 scenes that we talked about in Goodbye Uncle Tom. Well, we're going to go through a bunch of different movies, and we're going to show you how the vestiges of going from Nut to Venus has inexplicably affected black life, well, all life, but black life in particular, because it was no longer about life, and it was more about the use of a body as a thing. The psychology and horror of being T and A, right? So this movie right here is called Slaves, right? Of course, you say, what is this? Why are we going through this again? Because it's very important that you watch films like this, take the emotion out, and watch films for the facts that they are telling you in the film. So, 1969, and it stars Ozzie Davis and not Ruby Dee, but Dionne Warwick, right? So we're going to go ahead and play this real quick. So this is Dionne Warwick and Ozzie Davis, and it also has other people starring in it. It's like an all-star cast. So let's go through it real
I brought you some cornbread.
For God's sakes, miss.
Don't let noises around here spoil your appetite.
Black bastard! You all ain't getting off. You know he stole, and ain't one of you told me. Talk to me. Talk!
The missus brought us some cornbread,
Talk,
brother.
I say! Talk! Who done it? Who stole that sack of meal? Who? You the one? Liar! You liar! You stole it, you black bastard. You stole that bag. You know he stole. Makes you as bad as him. You don't squeal, you don't get no meal. Nobody eat tonight!
Where the hell have you been?
I'm an African woman. Put me in a cabin with that black man.
You? In a cabin? Dressed like that? You're free to come and go on my plantation. More than can be said for my neighbors' wives. I'll even let you pick cotton. Well, you may find you drink too much rum for that. Black is a condition, not a color. You're not black. You're like a rich man envying the poor for their virtue. Besides, they wouldn't have you in the cabin, even if you could stand it. You know me damn well, Cass. Don't make any mistake. I'm even stubborner than you are. I have to be. I'm master. I'll be back in town to go to bed.
You sure you won't need these earrings, master?
If you want to live in a cabin, you'd better be a good cotton picker. Be here when I get back. I don't sleep well without you anymore.
Now you see, she says that she's an African woman, and there are divisions that are happening. So when you watch this, you see that there are divisions. There are people who go along with the system and others who don't, right? And so this is what this whole movie is setting up, and you have to watch this because as you watch these films, you say, who am I? And I remember last week we said it is not your fault because this is from the breeding farms, right? And when we try to figure out why we can't move past and move to put ourselves in a rightful place after all the work that we've done, this is definitely the reason. So let's continue on here.
Don't be startled, but that handsome mask with its back to us is alive.
Who's the new one?
I finished running to the cabins every time you're in one of your nigger moods.
I mean the one who stared you in the face.
Well, the darky, Luke.
Uh-huh. I like him. He has no fear of you. What are you doing here? This is my room.
Help me, please, please help me.
There's your help. You learn to drink a lot of it. I'm not your mother. I didn't bear you. I feel nothing for you. If you have the courage, kill yourself. I'll even give you the knife, but don't come in here.
Very little.
Now, you see what the Dionne Warwick's character says. She says that I am not your mother. I have no feelings for you. Right? What do you think about that scene? Because it goes from him chastising her because she wants to go and be amongst someone that she's more familiar with once she meets the Ossie Davis character, right? Mm-hmm. But then you see him walk out the room. Now he's doing all this, and then you see him walk out the room, and he's going to where the new woman is. Then she's introduced to the new woman, and then the new woman comes, can you help me? Can you help me get out of this? I have no camaraderie with you. Boom. Do we see that today?
Yeah.
It's something that is still, that's why it's something that still comes from the time of slavery that we have to then wipe away. Right. We have to wipe it away, and we have to be able to, a lot of people don't like to read the books on the so-called conscious books or any of that. Well, guess what? You don't have to read it because it's right there in film. It's right there in film, and you can watch it right there in film form, and you have no problem. There's no problem. You can see it right in film, right?
It's just like, today with politics, right? So even though Joe Biden has an unsavory, political background, right? There are still a group of people who are willing to say, hey, so what? We're still for Joe. We're voting for Joe, right? President Trump, he also has an unsavory background. So, it's just like, to me, what's the difference between Biden and Trump? But then you still have a group of people who are willing to ride with or go along with Joe Biden because they feel, he's the lesser of the two evils. Well, those people are actually sellouts. Because it's just like, it's no lesser of the two evils, right?
Right.
It's about what's best for your people.
Right.
So, for those people, for the people who have an issue, because Puffy said, he made a statement about, what is your platform for black people to Joe Biden?
And he said he's going to hold the vote hostage until Joe Biden comes along.
So anybody that have a question regarding that is questionable, right? Because as a whole, everyone should have one agenda, which is what is number one, reparations.
Reparations.
Right. So if everybody can be on the same page as far as that goes, that kind of reminded me of that scene, right? So it's kind of like, we talk about this COVID-19, we talk about health, we talk about the need of health and wellness in the community, right? We talk about education in the community, we talk about businesses, we talk about home ownership, right? Okay. So what is the key to fixing all of that, right? Equal income, right? Because there is a disparity. So just 2019, they gave reparations again to the Jewish community, right? Again. Reparations have been given to so many other communities, right? But there seems to be an issue when it comes to giving reparations to the community that should actually have been given reparations like years ago. you know. And so
Centuries
when they bring
ago.
centuries ago, but when they talk about reparations today, you know, Biden or the Black Caucus and Bernie, this is where Bernie really screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
He could have actually won against Biden,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in the primary. But they say, oh, we need to study. What is there to study?
What is there to study?
Right?
Plenty
Because
of
we
movies
have
about
all
it.
of the facts. We have all of the historical facts. We have all the documentation. We actually have present day facts.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have the president of the United States, as well as multiple politicians on both sides of the party. We've had the media. We've had everyone. BT even did a special on saving ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So present day, there is an issue as far as health and wellness,
Mm-hmm.
right? Based on the finances, based
Mm-hmm.
on the type of jobs, lack of income.
Mm-hmm.
So what is there to study?
What is there to study?
So when I look at that scene, and when I see the one black woman, you know, say to the other black woman, well, she doesn't feel anything for her.
Mm-hmm.
I look and I say, okay, that's that same lineage of black people who don't feel for a particular black community who may not be of the same income. Because politics aside, that's not the issue,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, I mean, it's just, the issue is equal finances,
Mm-hmm.
reparations.
Right.
So, you know, so if you want the best of education, if you want healthy eating, healthy living, better work environment, just, you know, so it's just as simple as that. So, you know, I just sit back and just watch everybody tip-tap around each other, and they tip-tap around reparations, and they play all of these silly games, and I'm just like looking through all of the fake, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And those go vote for Biden, he's better than Trump. No, they're kind of like
The same.
the same. So, you know, you phony people that's running around, you know, quote unquote, you know, supposed to be looking out for the black community and supposedly of the black community, but you're telling them, hey, vote for this one. But then you're mad at Puffy when Puffy says, okay, well, what is the agenda? Because every other group has an agenda.
Everyone has one.
You know, they have an agenda for their people. Like, look at AOC. What is her name? Alexandria
Cortez Masto.
Okay. She has, we saw her on the Breakfast Club. I saw her on multiple morning programs. And she sticks to her agenda. She tells you over and over and over again her agenda, and she has had programs, right?
Mm-hmm.
She has backed multiple Latino candidates,
Mm-hmm.
and her agenda is looking out for her people.
Looking out for her people.
But then when Puffy says that Biden needs to have a black agenda, then there are some black people in an uproar. I've never seen a Latino community be in an uproar when Cortez says she has an agenda and this is what I want for my people. Mm-hmm. Her people don't get in an uproar. They stand behind her and say, yeah, what are you going to get for us? Do this for us, right?
Right.
The Hispanic caucus,
mm-hmm.
the Latino caucus, they have an agenda for their people.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Black caucus, their
agenda is for
everyone else. Right.
It's for the Hispanics. It's not for
black
people.
So it's just all just weird and crazy.
Which brings us to the next presentation. This is from Black Reels, people. Okay. Black Reels is a channel on YouTube that collects black history and film and documentary and all that. So this one right here is called Heritage of Slavery, right? And so this starts in North Carolina, okay. But it also moves to Mississippi. So let's listen to this and listen to the little Caucasian woman in the South and listen to the Caucasian man as they talk about what they're used to seeing. So let's go through this real quick.
Very little of what American cities have come to think of as racial turmoil has occurred in Charleston. But underneath the graciousness, old relationships are often found intact. Descendants of slaves work for descendants of slave owners. Mrs. Lionel Legg retains the tone of a past she cherishes.
So Daisy was my little playmate, my maid, my friend, and the daughter of old Catherine, who was a cook that we adored. And so all those years, we played together, and everyone was happy. We never heard of all these things that we hear about today. And there were nearly 100 enormous rice plantation with many animals around and a beautiful old house and about 100 colored people there. But we loved them, they were our friends. And then it's no disgrace to say they're like children. When we say that, it's because they are like happy children, some of them. Because they like to sit in the sun and rather than work hard.
They like to sit in the sun instead of work hard. They're like little children. Now listen to this. Does that not sound like what they call like middle management? Let's continue.
And they'd rather play than work.
If you could, would you paint a picture for us of what it was like on the plantation in your early days?
It was a lovely, happy time living in open spaces with many lovely colored people and animals and flowers and fields.
Now you see, he had to shift. He had to shift his position in his chair. Color. Okay, let's continue.
My father had everything thoroughbred, from the pigs, horses, the dogs, and the people had to be thoroughbred. And we would get into a buggy with him and drive to the plantation from what we call the pine land where we lived. And we would spend, every Saturday this was, and we would spend the day in old Fortune, I can see him now, would give us dinner, and we would have a heavenly time, and old April.
Old Fortune is a slave. Mm-hmm. And when they were at the picnic, he would have prepared the food and given out the food, right? But yet they're lazy and just like little children and don't want to work. Let's continue.
Well, he was the dairyman. That's all he did. All he did was to skim the cream over these great big bowls of clabber and put them in the wooden churn and churn this marvelous fresh butter.
The Southern white man just loves to say that, oh, our Negroes are happy. They like it. They like the way things are. If other people would just leave them alone, there wouldn't be any problem. And some, I think, really believed it. And I think that that's one thing perhaps that sort of thrown them off balance when all of a sudden their Negroes just weren't behaving the way they thought they ought to behave. You were just a doormat. And that's where the good relations came in. As long as you're a doormat, we have wonderful relations.
In Mississippi, white control has made the past hard to distinguish from the present. More than anyone else, the spirit of resistance to this...
Now this is Fannie Lou Hamer, right? So we moved from North Carolina to M-I, crooked letter I, crooked letter I, humpback, I. Mississippi, right? So listen to what Fannie Lou Hamer has to say.
Control has been Fannie Lou Hamer. At the 1964 Democratic Convention, Mrs. Hamer was a leader of the attempt to unseat the regular Democratic delegation from Mississippi.
Now, let me stop there. See, when all the time you'll see me write and say Dixiecrats, right? Mm-hmm. Because in the South, the ones that were doing the lynching and the people and all that, they were Dixiecrats. Of course, they were Republicans, right? But these were Dixiecrats, right? And then, they switched in 64, 65, 68 when Johnson signed 64, 65, 68 Civil Rights Act. They said they switched over to the Republican Party and said that the Democrats would never take the South. But there were some Democrats that never switched over. They would be called Blue Dog Democrats because they were conservative. And this is what we see. So when I say Dixiecrats, that's what we're talking about, right? And so there's still Dixiecrats today. They take you for granted. They take your vote, but they give you nothing every 4 years for your vote.
Kind of like today, huh?
Kind of like today. That's what I'm saying. Every 4 years, they take it because they say we can count on our good Nick. We can count on them because they happy where they at. If the people would just leave them, if the puppies would just leave them alone.
Mississippi is still a very rough place. You know, people is not just walking up like they used to do in the past, walking out, you know, shooting a man down or getting maybe 200 or 300 people carrying you out and lynching you, but it's in a more settled way. You know, they can let you starve to death, not give you jobs. These are some of the things that's happening right now in Mississippi. See, Mississippi is not actually Mississippi's problem. Mississippi is America's problem. Because if America wanted to do something about what has been going on in Mississippi, it could have stopped by now.
Well, bigotry means that you believe in a creed, a cultural stem of life, a way of life, and this I do believe in. I believe that we have communities here we've developed in our country that we have to protect, and I believe a community way of life has been developed for 75 years, and I don't believe it should be broken up. And I think that this is the way we'll have to fight for it from now on in. It's going to be a community life versus those that want to come into it, and that's going to be rough. And if this means racism, it's going to be practiced on both sides.
So you're a practicing bigot, then?
I'm a practicing bigot. I believe in my way of life.
Far as I'm concerned, things are getting worse in America. I haven't seen where American did nothing for the black people. What have American did? They gave a few Negro with higher position a higher job. That's still not helping the grassroots. I'm in the grassroots. My little brothers around here are in the grassroots. My sister is living in the grassroots. She's still living in the grassroots. As a young black man, I feel that I have an obligation to my race of people. Not to no other race, or no other nationality, just to black people.
To no other race, to no other people, just black people.
And you know, other groups, you know, they're the same way, right? Mm-hmm. But, you know, there's an issue with some, I don't want to say black people, they're colored people, because there are...
There's a difference.
There's a difference.
There's a difference.
I mean, because you have like a bunch of colored people who are, you've got to get behind Hillary and Biden, and it doesn't matter, and we have to fight for, get out there and push, and fight for the immigration, and it doesn't, matter about what's going on in your communities, or none of that matters. What matters is everyone else's issue, right?
Right.
So, but what I find interesting is, we have to do this because, I do a lot of reading, mm-hmm. watch news, watch different programs, right? Mm-hmm. And so I notice like other groups, they'll discuss like their people, mm-hmm. right? And what they need to do in their politics and how to better their community, mm-hmm. which is smart, right?
Which is very smart.
But then whenever I watch the different black politicians, right? Mm-hmm. Or it could be business people, or it could be black business people. It could be like a black celebrity or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And all they say is black and brown community, mm-hmm. black and brown community, black and brown community, mm-hmm. right? But I've never seen the other communities. I've never seen like other
Racist people say black and brown,
yeah,
black and white.
Yeah, I've never heard like the Chinese or Latinos say black and brown or community or people of color community, or I find that it's only black people.
They do that,
or not black, colored people, because they like to say they're colored, right? Because when old girl ran for office, what's her name?
He said she's people of color.
Kamala Harris, right?
People of color.
Said she was people of color. So I find that people of color, they do that a lot. You know, they say black and brown, black and brown, black and brown. But then I've never ever seen a show where other groups of people mention black.
They can be sitting on the panel together.
And they don't say black
and they will sit up there and they will talk their group, and then they'll sit there and they have that look on their face. They have that deadpan look when the black people say black and brown.
Right. And which is fine. You're supposed to look out for your community, right? That's just like in your family, right? The mother and father is going to look out for their family, their children.
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm. So, which is smart. But I get confused when I see, quote unquote, whatever.
Rhetorically confused. Because it's not really confusing. We know what it is.
And they say, and these are black people saying black and brown, black and brown, black and brown. And I'm like, no one else mentions
black. And brown.
Right. Because everyone is looking out for their community.
Looking out for themselves.
So, but it's just, I mean, I just, you know.
So now, people. So you heard what the little Caucasian woman, the Southern woman, I guess you could call her back then.
Not to cut you off, but I just need to finish this thought, right? So I, when I see that, I'm like, okay, well then, is that a form of self-hate that you can't say, I'm looking out for my community or the black community? Right. You have to throw other groups in every time you talk, but yet other groups never, ever, ever, ever mention the black community, or they never mention how this is why we as a group have gotten as far as we have, thanks to the civil rights movement, thanks to Martin Luther King, as well as many others who shed blood for the rights of actually all people of color, because that movement started off, it was a group of black people who fought for black rights because of being treated unfairly. Being treated cruelly, right?
That's right.
So,
which is part of the American black politic, right?
So, but then I've never heard any other group say, yes, we do have to stick together. Black people, brown people, red people, all people, we have to do this. Asian, yellow people, we have to stick together, and we have to do this because I am grateful for the Fannie Lou Hamers, you know, and the Medgar Evers, and on and on and on and on and on, who made civil rights for me and my group of people to come from the various countries that we have come from across the world. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you know, I don't know. Since I was a little girl, I've been reading. My mother been giving me history books, so I don't know if that makes a difference.
It makes a difference.
I mean, so, you know, and I look back and I observe, and I watch people, and I can see the difference.
Can see the difference.
So.
Right. So, people, that's the part of American black politics. Now, knowing this and the detriment that this has had, right? Again, this show is dealing with the horror of being just
you know, we can talk.
It's dealing with the horror of just being considered, the psychological horror of being T and A, right? So as we go through, what is T and A? It's something to be traded, bartered, kept in a slave-like condition. So this next clip is called Women in Prison. Hopefully you're taking this down, and when you watch this back, you'll be able to go watch these films because they are available. And we are going through quite a few films to break this down today, because this is very important as we lead into the election and people worried talking about what Trump said, and we're living in the world of Venus and not Newt. Okay? So when we're living in the world of Venus, which is the goddess of sex, lust, love, and not Newt, the goddess of life. Two different vantage points, right? Two different ways of looking at it. One more black-centric and the other more European. So right here, this one is called Women in Prison. Now listen to what they say. Now, the woman, the little Caucasian woman, says something about them being children. Now watch this.
You know, we can talk at the table, but we're not supposed to talk to people next to us, which I wasn't talking to nobody, but I was looking. And she didn't like that, so she put me out of the line, which is embarrassing, you know. And everybody looking and wanting to know, what are you doing there? You know, and I'm sitting up in the day room like some fool by myself, you know. And when she came back, she gave me a little lecture, you know, like a little naughty kid. Don't do that no more.
It makes you feel very immature because of the rules they have here, do's and don'ts. You can't do this, you can't do that.
They want you to act like grown, mature women, but yet they treat you like children.
You're never right. You can never be right. The women can't go to the potty, as they say. You have to be on the potty list.
And you must say, Miss So-and-so, may I have my medication?
In the dining room, you're not supposed to sit with another cottage.
You have to have a pass to go to school. You have to have a pass to go up in the front.
No holding hands, walking down the line. No lollygagging, as they call it. No combing another woman's hair. Physical contact. You can't pluck another woman's eyebrows. You can't stand in another woman's door. You can't accidentally walk in the bathroom on a woman.
So they treat you like children, and when you begin to act like children, then they want to lock you up, because first thing they'll say, well, that was childish. Don't you think that was rather childish?
I've never felt like this before in my life. It makes you feel bitter. They try to take everything away from you, but it only makes you cold inside and builds up a whole lot of hatred. It's just like having a pressure put down on you, that you can't get up off of, and sometimes when you lay down and go to sleep, you wish that you would never wake up the next morning so you wouldn't have to go through the same thing that you went through the day before.
Now look, so this is we're in the goddess of Venus and not in the goddess of Newt. Goddess of Venus is about competition. It's about keeping women away from each other. What else does this remind you of? This reminds you of South Africa and the papers that people have to pass. Here's the hall pass. Have you ever noticed that that's how it was in elementary school? And it would be mostly with white teachers, and really the curriculum was put down by white folks. So you had to have a pass to go here, go there. So it was like a conditioning, right? And this is all set up. So this is in the goddess of Venus. When we're in the goddess of Newt world, then women would realize they realize that they are the ones that bring about life, so there wouldn't be any competition. You see how this is playing out and what they do. So let's continue.
If people are treated like children, I think, no question, maybe sometimes they are, but I think at times they behave like children.
So now this is a movie called Black Snake, right? Black Snake is a term for a whip. Black Snake, 1973, right? So this is a book that Yvette Cornell talks about, which is where they talk about the white woman as slave master.
Oh, they
right?
were her property.
They were her property, right? Okay. So these films break out, right? Have you ever noticed like middle management and how they treat black bodies and how black bodies are still on the front lines of working. And this is what this is all about. This is all pandemic lessons that we have to learn, that we have to move forward. This is why reparations is very important. Because if you have reparations, paying for college wouldn't be an issue. Right?
Or getting medication, or eating healthy fruits and vegetables.
That's right.
You would have the resources to get together to put a farmer's market or a grocery store with fresh fruit in your community.
Because life would be different.
In your community.
So let's continue here. So remember, we talked last week, we showed you the pimp, and we showed you and we showed you now the breeding farms. Now we're going to show you the Caucasian woman as master. Now watch this now. Very important. This goes to middle management. Now remember, there's different hierarchy. Now that was a case of buck busting right there. A case of buck busting right there on film. See, if you don't want to read the books, if you don't want to know, all you had to do is have a critical eye and a critical thinking mind to be able to break this down. If you don't want to read the books, you want to know, it's right there in the movies. It's right there in the movies for you to be able to watch. Now, there has always been a hierarchy. The ones who would be with the people who were doing the oppressing. So watch this film. Watch this very closely. Watch this very closely. Watch what happens in this scene right here.
Daddy, would you mind fastening my dress? Are you quite sure of the direction in which your interest lies?
My interest lies in only what you pay me, which is hardly enough.
It's all I can afford, Raymond.
Joxer makes more.
Well, Joxer produces sugarcane, and that's where the money is.
And not without me and my men. When you leave for Paris, I should be placed in charge.
Joxer would never take orders from a...
I help you.
Fill in the blank.
Yeah, fill in the blank. He won't never take orders from a... You see, we've always said it, and I always say it all the time, the racism breeds in the woman. Very, very, very important, right? Because remember, we're in Venus. We're not in Newt. We're in Venus. So let's continue on. Now, watch this guy. Now, watch the captain or general or whatever they call it.
Real good, massa. Every way. Just like the boss man say.
Cleone, do you remember Lady Susan Walker's husband?
Husband?
Her man.
Boss lady have plenty men.
I mean the one that lived with her. A tall Englishman with blonde hair.
Massa Jonathan.
That one. What happened to him?
Him duppy now.
Duppy, what's that?
After man die, sometimes he not ready to go up there. He just float around and he die.
Sorry to interrupt your gymnastics, old boy, but duty calls. And best forget those doopy tales. Your master's hardly interested in such foolishness.
Senseless from behind. Hey, hey, you've got an awful hard noggin up with to get off the floor so fast after the whack I gave you.
You thought that I was...
Yeah, so if it's a notion you won out over me, because you spent the night with her ladyship, you'll be blowing smoke rings out your bunghole.
This is an Irishman. Stay tuned.
It's not how you do in bed. It's how you cut it here.
Annie, you're a bloody loud has-been. Or as our Lady Susan says...
I'm gonna lay it on you until you crawl into a hole like champion attack!
Joker,
You keep out of this, Delaney!
this display, Irishman, is certainly not in the best interest of Lady Suzanne. I did not come here to educate. Instead, my intentions were to exchange a few words with your subaltern.
If you can't do the job, I will. The whip!
So you see, there's always a competition between the Caucasian man and the Caucasian woman. There's always a competition. Who can do it better? That is what it is. It's a competition. So just because they're in arguing doesn't mean that black folks have to be arguing with each other, right? That's what we learn in all this. So let me pull this forward a little bit, and let's go to comeuppance of those who sell their own people, right? Or people who they don't see as their people because
Sergent Pompidou? Sergent Pompidou, où est-ce que tu es?
The tension in this scene is really good.
Sergent Pompidou, venez ici immédiatement.
The cuts and the edits on this, beautifully done to tell this story, right?
All alone, Captain Deladier.
I presume you're responsible for this dégât. You will die where you stand, old man.
God will protect me. I decided to help him a bit.
He decided to help him a bit. Keep watching.
Bullets were removed from the Webley. Your time has come, Captain Deladier. Prepare to meet thy maker.
Paysans, go back to your compounds now. Reinforcements are on their way from Port Cristobal. They will arrive any moment. You believe you can kill me? You are but rabble. A ragtag mob led by a babbling preacher. I am a soldier. My people were warriors, descendants of kings, destined to die on the field of battle, not at the hands of scum, a gathered herd of dirty
My little magnolia blossom, I'm getting too old and sentimental. I only make them work 10 hours a day now.
Now this right here is a film called Passion Plantation, right? And so this again is showing you, this time this is a daughter and father, and of course he didn't have any sons, and you know, in the patriarchal society under the male, who only uses Venus for sex, love, and lust and all that, they're not seen as equal, so thus and so they have to be harder. And this is where we say that in film, we always say this, not in film but in real life, that the racism breeds in the female, in the white female, and this is an example of this in film.
Oh, you're spoiling. You've got to be cruel to be kind.
I've been a hard master all my life, daughter. I feel I've earned myself a rest. I've had enough responsibility, more than enough. But who'd look after things?
Even though I'm a woman, I do everything. I'll set the slaves a good example, Father. It takes a woman's touch. Watch. Straighten your back, you. And don't whimper. See, Pop? I can make myself respected. You have to admit it.
Oh, yes, I do.
At the same time, she's talking about being respected. Here she is in the jungle getting in with some guy that's trying to get on the plantation as an overseer. Here she is getting in, but at the same time, she's looking at this black man. He comes out black. And so it seems like this is a prearranged thing that she does with this lady as the story goes. It seems like it's a prearranged thing that she does with right, this particular slave, right? But being that she already got her some with a person that's coming on trying to be on the plantation to be an overseer, this is what pushes through. So this is just some it's just dumb thinking. But the Italians, again, they make films that show facts. So here we are. So we come here and let me fast forward it just a little bit. So she's in by the water because you know she has to clean herself up. She's at the water.
Come on out. You're not much good at playing hide and seek. Don't be shy now. A big boy like you. Come on over here. Come on. Now you can dry my back. Get back, you animal. Well, I declare you tried to kiss me just then. Giotto, hurry up, will you?
But, Missy, I just did what you said to do.
What's the trouble, Missy Johnson?
Come here, Giotto. This uppity slave here tried to do things to me. He's got to be punished.
I'll see to that.
Stake him out and whip the sass out of him.
She tells her father that she can be as hard as he can. She can take his place on the hardness. And so what she's setting up is teaching.
Missy said you gotta learn the hard way.
About middle management structure. And it doesn't matter what you say or how you say it. And I can always tell people want something done.
I'll just get these thongs tight.
I don't deserve this, Missy. Why are you doing this to me? Why?
You're doing fine.
See, he was doing fine because he is the example, another example that she's going to use to show her father that she can take over the plantation. Because remember, there's always a competition between a Caucasian male and Caucasian female because they did not value, because it's a patriarchal system and not one that's a matriarchal system where everything is more conducive to everyone being open and sharing, right? And so this is what this is. So this is we're in the arc of Venus and not in the arc of Nude, right? And Venus is just on a shell in the water or on the ground. She's not what is that, terrestrial.
Right.
Right? So what do you think about this?
As far as?
I mean, just the whole point, middle management and things, and how this is showing what people should be looking out for.
Yeah, well, you know, I had a conversation with you about this a couple of days ago. As far as it's hard to read where some people's minds are based on the stupid decisions that they continue to make. So, hey, I mean, there are, we talked about this too, there are not many, although there are, you know, black people that went to law school, but there are not many who are of the same mind as a Johnny Cochran.
This is true.
Right.
Right.
So, you know, it's kind of like, because on that same plantation, I'm sure there was another slave that said, she's trouble, stay away from her, you need to stay over here with us, stop, you know, venturing around, and just because she's smiling in your face, she's a snake, she's venomous, she's evil, they're wicked, stay away from them. But then there's some, oh no, you know, oh no, you know, we're all...
Tierra King says, oh no, that's torture.
Right? Hi, Tierra.
Yeah, she said, that's torture, right? So look, as we come through, see, film, if you don't want to read the books, right? If you don't want to necessarily watch a film that's all about that, where somebody is lecturing about this, then it's in the movies, and you have to watch it with a critical eye, right? You have to watch it with a critical eye and say, this is what is still happening in society today, and where do I place myself? What character am I in this ongoing motion picture? Now, this movie is called Black Samson, but everybody knows Samson. Everybody in the Bible, all the Bible people are black, and that's what they're talking about, right? Because, you know, he had locks, you know what I'm saying? He was a judge, you know what I'm saying?
So was that character, he wasn't Samson, was he?
No, this is Samson. This is Black Samson in the Hood, 1974, right?
Okay, that's coming up.
This is what this is. This is Black Samson right here. No, so and I just went from the foolish. Now I'm getting to the man that's about building in his community, right? And remember now, we're talking about the horror of being, the psychological horror of being T and A, considered T and A. So as we watch this film, as we watch this, we see a different relationship, or more of a Newt type relationship in this film. And so let's go through this.
What you drinking, baby? Wine. Rosé for a rose.
Rosé.
You know, Playboy says champagne over peaches is a thing.
Will you stop that?
Mama always said dynamite came in little packages. Da, baby. Da, baby. My love is coming down now. Come here, Mama. I love the way you walk. Love the way you move.
You know, that kind of sounds like lyrics from Prince's Irresistible Bitch, right? Love the way you walk. Love the way you talk. And also sounds like Outkast. I like the way you move. See how things move and continue, and it's like a, right? It's a continuation. And some things are good to be continued, like black love, that's good. But certain things, certain pathologies that came from off of being on a plantation, that is bad. We need to get off the hamster wheel on a lot of it, right? And this is what this shows you. We're in Venus and we should be in Newt if we're, moving through. So let's continue.
I know. You relax.
That was Johnny Napa in the bar the other day, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
He's bad, too.
So they tell me.
It's a fact.
Don't worry about him. You give him a pizza and he goes away.
You don't take anything serious, do you?
I take you serious.
I don't believe you.
Whatever we got, it ain't bad.
Baby, I think it's time you went to work.
Me? Go to work?
You like to dance, don't you?
Let me pause this for a minute. Now look, here we go. Now this is using the white woman as a trap, as a foil, kind of like the last film. See how this continues on and it continues on. Now remember, these films are fictional plays, so to speak, teleplays or screenplays, but they're based in fact, right? So you notice that in this conversation, this love conversation between this black man and black woman, it is a love situation, but within that is talking about the politics and the society and the social order that you're in and moving to overcome. Those are the conversations that are done within this. So, and what it is there's always something there that's in between. And some of the teachings, they taught us that black people's relationships would be even better if racism was not a factor, because those conversations wouldn't be about race and society. It would be strictly about love and working together to achieve without needing to talk about that extra. But those conversations are in conversations within black love and black conversations. Whereas you see here, this is a situation where here's a dominant male again, and then he's using her as Venus. Let's play this.
Sure.
Well, a fella I know needs a dancer.
Are you kidding? What's it about?
Well, I want to find out about this guy, a nigger. A nigger named Samson.
A nigger? Come on, Johnny.
You always said you wanted to help me, baby. And now is your chance.
Henry?
Yes, sir.
You think you can play something she can dance to?
Yes, sir. Real funky.
That'll do it.
Now listen, people. It's very important that you take notes on this, or after this is over, you go back and go watch these films. This is all these films lay out. These films lay out and they give you facts. Remember now, these are screenplays. These are fictional stories. But within screenplays, when you write a screenplay, you're supposed to do research. That's what made Goodbye, Uncle Tom such, though it was erotica purposefully made to try to desensitize, the facts in the film were accurate, and so now it becomes a testament to what to look out for to break the chain from off of your mind. So let's continue with this right here. Now listen. Now remember, I said that there's a connection between the black man and the black woman, and working and knowing what will work to get to push over and get over to the other side and be successful. So watch how this scene plays out.
She's good. Damn good.
Yeah.
Knowing you like I do, I'm sure you could give her a job.
Sure am.
Now look here. Now he knew his clientele, right? And he knew that as soon as he got that pale porcelain up there, all of a sudden they was just gonna go all. They was gonna go to the bar and buy more because he understands his clientele. He's not like that, but he understands his clientele. Remember, I told you in the Tales from the Black Ice, I talked about a pimp who sent in a stringy hair Caucasian chick in before he came in and tried to do some business to put some for me to purchase some of his DVD and book combinations, and he walked in on the wrong one that wasn't interested in stringy blonde or porcelain skin. He walked in on the wrong one and he had to call her off, and that's what he did. So you should go watch the Tales from the Black Ice. But so let's continue with this now. Remember now, there is a tension. These movies tell you the truth. There's a tension between the Caucasians, the female and the male. There's not, when we are in our right mind state, though we are dealing with racism, it is not in the black mind, right? So these stories tell you the truth.
Wish we could always be like this.
Soon. I just got a little more easy work to do, and it's all gonna be mine.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about that nigger.
He's not so bad.
What does that mean?
He's nice to me.
How nice?
Come on, Johnny. He didn't mean anything. He just talks
Viewer discretion is advised.
to me.
You ain't found out nothing about him.
That's because there's nothing to find out.
Say so. If I find out that you fucked that nigger, I'm gonna carve you 9 ways. You cunt, you bitch!
Sonny, no!
Told him you told that nigger bastard. You're the fuck.
I don't know anything!
What's the matter, baby?
Samson, you know.
Now this is the tension where we get into fear. And fear is a problem. So you saw the relationship between the Caucasian male and the Caucasian female. And you see the relationship between the black male and the black female, right? And so we get into this as he's Black Samson, and you know, the story of Samson in the Bible, of course, is an adaptation, not exactly the same, but it goes through. So let's go through it here and let's listen to this conversation.
What do you want me to do?
I want you to get out of their way before they chop you to pieces.
Oh, that sounds good.
Then why not?
The streets are clean. The people trust me.
People. The people? Your brothers and sisters ain't gonna do no dying for you. Look, Samson, let's say you get by for a month, 2 months, a year. They'll get you. Sooner or later, they never give up. You're just one man. When you're dead, they're gonna move in and just take over anyhow.
If I thought I could back off, I'd back off.
All you got to do is pack and get out.
It's not that easy. This is the last chance for our people to stand up.
Stand Stand up and be a target? Are you trying to be some kind of martyr? That's it, you want to die, don't you?
Hey, man, get yourself killed. But leave her out of it.
You didn't...
You see, each scene comes up and brings fear, right? Each scene has to do with the fear. Now, this particular scene that's up next has to do with a person who is working. See, when you work and you get paid by the other that has oppressed you, you're not going to give up because it doesn't seem like there's any money there from the people from your side of it, right? And that's where we're going to end today as far as this, because we're probably going to have to do a part 2, right? We're going to do a part 2 because we got quite a few more films to go through. But first we have to review Beats, yes, right, on Netflix. It's a movie on Netflix called Beats. So we're going to switch gears and we're going to come back to that. We're going to come back to part 2 of the psychological horror of being T and A. So we've told you so far that it went from Newt, which was 3100 BC, to then Venus that was 700 BC. See, as the numbers get lower, so we're looking at 51. We're looking at 5100 or 5100 years ago for the concept of woman as protector, right? As protector of gods, right? To Venus, which was 700 BC, which has to do with sex, love, lust, and she's not she's not terrestrial, she's just on the ground. You see? So people, right now we're getting ready to talk about Beats, and we're going to come back next week again and talk about part 2 of that because it's very important. But take notes and watch those and look out for next week. But now we're getting ready to talk about a film. Yeah. It is a great film, we must tell you. As great as Hustle and Flow. And Hustle and Flow was a great movie starring Terrence Howard and Anthony Anderson. But Anthony Anderson has a way of being in films that have the pulse of hip hop within it, right? And Beats on Netflix is one of those films, right? It's one of those films. So let's go to the trailer real quick, and then we're gonna come back, and talk about the film, or we'll talk through the trailer. Here we go.
August hasn't been in class since last October. We need him in the class. It's a budget thing.
Are you gonna make sure my son doesn't get shot walking home from school?
Is that your son in there making music right now? You know who I am?
Security guard at my school.
I mean, yeah, I am, but I'm also a manager. I want to help you with your music.
I know what to love like my city, Shot City. Everywhere I go, still got it in me.
Okay, so look. So this takes place in Chicago. There's a young man who produces music, but something happens at the beginning of the film where he has a tremendous loss and he suffers from PTSD.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so he can no longer go to school because he's in Chicago and he has to walk through various different neighborhoods because obviously the bus program was defunded for some reason instead of having the bus program still there so he could be bused to school. So he has to walk, far away, or they cut out the program that would give you a bus pass to hop on the bus and head to school, right? The Rita, in Cleveland it's called the Rita, in Las Vegas it's called RTC, and I don't know what they call it in Chicago, but it's the bus line. And for some reason, all that is cut out and it's at your own risk.
Yeah.
Right? Which goes back to much of what we've been talking about already and what we find ourselves in as a people. So look, something happens traumatically, it's very traumatic for him at the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
PTSD. At the same time, they introduce you to Anderson, who is a security guard at a high school.
Yeah.
And he is prodded by the principal because they are looking to get money, or they will have more budget cut if they don't have the number of bodies, black bodies in the seats. You see how black bodies are counted to make money. Still, some things never change. And so they need to have that, or it's going to be more budget cuts, and there's going to be some teachers and things laid off, right?
Yep.
So he's given the list, and he goes out and he knocks on people's doors. A lot of doors are slammed in his face, and he finally makes it over to the young kid's place, right? So this young kid right here, you got the cast. So this young kid here, right? He makes it to the house and he's talking to his mother. And so he just levels with the mother that, you know, hey, you know, we need him in class because, you know, we're going to suffer budget cuts if we don't have the bodies in the class, right? The bodies, the black bodies, basically, he didn't say that, but that's what it is, in the classroom, even if they're not learning anything, right? So let's go on, keep on with the trailer, right? So he talks to the mom. And the mom says, "Are you gonna keep my son alive?"
I want to help you with your music.
Ain't no other love like my city, Shot City. Everywhere I go, still got it in me. Crown by the hood.
Stay right there.
If I'm rocking, ain't ready with me. Hit the red line.
So he's a machine that makes a beat a minute.
He's fragile. See me now, lit skyline.
Oh, what's her name?
The way that they incorporate the music in the piece, the actual artist, they make you believe that this kid is actually the one who performs on the song, and he actually is producing these beats, and they make you believe these are the actual artists. It's beautifully
done.
Beautiful concept, right?
Okay, so the cast, right?
Okay.
Starring Khalil Everidge. He stars as August Monroe. Okay, and then we know Anthony Anderson.
So that's August Monroe.
Right.
And Anthony Anderson is.
You know the way they have it broken. Okay, Anthony Anderson plays Romello Reese.
Romello Reese, who in his earlier days in the 90s, he was a hip hop manager / producer. And for some reason he discovers this Caucasian guy. And somehow the Caucasian guy that looks kind of like Bubba Sparks goes on, and somehow he's left on the sidelines to rebuild, and he comes across this young fresh kid making these beats, who has basically quarantined himself, self-quarantined himself from the world of violence that is Chicago. So go ahead with it.
Okay, so August Monroe's mother, right, is played by, her name is Carla Monroe. Is played by the actress Uzo Aduba from Orange is the New Black. And she does a great job.
She does a great job. I mean, like, her acting, all the performances in this film are A1.
They are.
It's one of those films that could have been in the theater, and it seems like Anthony Anderson, again, always finds the pulse of hip hop to be in the film. This is like, you could watch Hustle and Flow and then pick up and imagine that this is the continuation, though different characters in different cities.
Because Anthony Anderson, he does like such a great job that you forget that you're watching Anthony Anderson.
This is true.
And his character, you know, is so believable. And we talked about Khalil, the actor who plays August Monroe, how he emotes
Yes.
Like, you know, in the scenes, you know, he's a great young actor.
He is
really good actor.
He acts and brings it across like teenagers today.
Yeah.
It's like I mean, it reminded us of someone. When you watch this film, it reminded us of someone, and sure, it reminds you of a son, a son. And even the female interest in the film reminds you of a daughter or a nephew or a cousin. It would just remind you, and it's just a really...
It's entertaining. It's great storytelling. And the trailer that I saw does not do it justice.
No, it doesn't.
No, because this is a really good film.
Really great film.
And the trailer is okay, but I'm glad that let me watch this film, because the trailer was like, but Anthony Anderson is in it, so I said, okay, so it's got to be good.
It's got to be good.
Okay, so I said, let me watch it, and I said, Beats. I said, okay, well, Beats, you know, I love music, right? I love hip hop, so let me give it a chance. So I'm glad that we did, because this is a really good film. Great film.
Really great film, right? The cinematography, using Chicago as a living character within it, beautifully done. Showing you the inside of the school, beautifully done. The conflict in Anthony Anderson's character's life, his love life, you know, his separation from his wife, beautifully depicted in the film, and all of it has to do with the music and the decisions that he made early on, and how this is like a second chance for him to get it right. So it's a redemption story, it's a coming of age story, and it's also a hero's journey story, because the kid has to finally build up the courage enough to walk again in the neighborhood, to get over his his trauma. Right? Beautifully done. So the cinematography, 10. The arc of the story itself, 10. The use of the city as a living character, 10. The use, the kid, his arc, 10. See, there's a story arc, and then there's the arc of the kid, there's an arc of Anthony Anderson, there's an arc of the principal, there's an arc of the love interest of the kid, and then you introduce to the secondary characters, which is the mom and then her dad, and I mean it's beautifully done.
And then we talked about the music, how good the music is, right? So we've got hip hop artist Dave East starring in the film. He's starring in the film also, along with hip hop artist Drizzy. She's also in the film. So just like the flow is tight, the music is nice. I mean, the production. We're not going to give everything away, because we want you to see the film. But what you do need to know is that he is a great beat maker, right? So, and just listening to all his different beats and stuff, like if you are a fan of music, if you love music, if you love listening to like the Swiss Beats and Timberland and Dre and Pharrell and multiple other great producers, just to sit back and just watch this film alone, just to hear the music and the beat construction, and just they did a really, really, really good job.
Solid editing on it, beautiful, everything. It's just incredible. So, what would you rate Beats?
Definitely a 10, because when the movie was over with, you know a movie is good when it ends and you like, okay, I want more. You know, so after we saw the film, I went online. I'm like, is it gonna be like a part 2 to this, because it was so good.
It was so good.
You know, and then they do such a great job with the characters and writing the characters, and you feel like you know the characters, you're invested, right? And what I love about the script is it wasn't like just a regular, like the same story beat, right? So it was, you get the twists and turns and how you think it's gonna like what
Go.
you think is how you think it's gonna go doesn't go, and it turns this way and it turns that way, and I mean just really good storytelling, and you just want more, right. And so that's how I know I had to give it a 10 because it is a good film and really good. So definitely see Beats on Netflix because it's definitely worth seeing. Definitely. Yeah.
So I give it a 10. It is worth seeing. Yeah. Go see this film. So this has been another great episode of the Film Review. Movies, music, culture, politics, and society. We are the husband and wife team. I'm Crazy Dee.
I'm Tracey.
And we review movies, music, culture, politics, and society. Yes. And we will see you next week with episode 112, the Film Review. Okay. And we are
have a good
Audi, Kurt, Audi. And we're out. So it goes a little bit like this. The Film Review, movies, music, culture, politics, society podcast, interviews, movie reviews, and more. Live Sundays at 5:30 p.m. on the Film Review Live channel. Subscribe.
Hi, this is Bernadette Stannis, Thelma from Good Times, and you're watching the Film Review.